Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program and we're studying chapter 20 in our book titled Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. The title of this chapter is Animal to Human, the Evolution of Our Consciousness. This is where you're learning about how as human beings, we've been reborn out of the animal realm. Many of us have come into the human realm from our animal existences. And because of these constant animal existences, our mind has been conditioned very much like an animal. So in the unenlightened human state, the mind functions very much like an animal. But we aren't animals, we're human beings, and we can evolve beyond our animalistic instincts. And that's essentially what the path to enlightenment is doing, is helping you to become a better and better human being, where you can cultivate wisdom and shed these animalistic instincts, becoming a better and better human being. So I'm going to help you to be able to understand what's being shared here in this particular chapter so that you can understand not only how one evolves from animal to human, but also we're going to be discussing the 5 realms of existence. This is kind of a student's first introduction to the cycle of rebirth, because as you guys might remember way back at the beginning of the group learning program, I shared with students that it's wise to set aside the cycle of rebirth until a future date. And that future date is usually a year and a half, 2 years into your development on the path to enlightenment, or maybe even longer, because there are certain teachings that you need to be able to learn and understand to really get your arms around the practice of moving the mind to the enlightened mental state. And what's happened in the past related to the cycle of rebirth, it's in the past. And what's happening or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. You haven't experienced that yet. So what I tend to focus students' minds on when they first get started is focus on things like the 3 universal truths and the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, meditation training, and all these kinds of things. So that's where students are oftentimes focusing. But in today's class, I'm going to give you a little bit of an introduction to the cycle of rebirth and helping you to understand how we move from this animal realm into the human realm and the 5 realms of existence. I'm going to explain to you why the Buddha taught these things and helping you understand how it fits into the teachings. So whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly, I'd like to just welcome all of you to our class today. I start class with a meditation, which you're welcome to join in on. I actually start with chanting to ease us into the meditation. Then you're going to hear a period of time where I'm going to be guiding you in the meditation. Then there's a period of time where we're just quiet and everyone's meditating together. Then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then that's where I'll start the class and teach you about the cycle of rebirth and getting you started with this nice introduction. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you might pull up a meditation cushion or a chair. Maybe you're on a sofa or a bench or a wheelchair. There are 4 positions to meditate in. Oftentimes students are learning in the seated position, but there's also lying, standing, and walking as well. So again, I'm going to start with the chanting, which you're welcome to join in on if you'd like. And then afterwards, I'll come back in with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Otang Mahakevanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakevata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakevato Sāvaka Saṅgho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti Piso Makawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusarang Oto Bhagavati. Okay. With the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวะพุทธังมะคะวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวะมนุสนังโอโตภะคะวะเต Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I'd like to once again welcome all of you guys, whether you're joining for the first time, you're joining regularly, or perhaps you joined while we're meditating. Welcome to everyone. As I mentioned at the beginning of class, our class today is all about the cycle of rebirth and helping you guys to understand this and introducing it to you. You're going to understand it in more detail as you move into the Pali Canon and English study group, or you get to volume 11 of the book series. The Cycle of Rebirth is volume 11 of the 13-volume book series for a reason, because it's wise to just set it to the side when you first start and really focus on developing your mind and training your mind, working on getting the pollution out of the mind and moving the mind closer and closer to enlightenment, to get to that peace and joy by eliminating the pollution of the mind. Now that you're in this human existence, it's the ideal existence to be able to make your way to enlightenment. What's happened in the past, it's in the past. It doesn't matter anymore. You can't go back and change any of that stuff. And what may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. And that future is going to be determined on what you do right now. And you may or may not ever be reborn. If you get to enlightenment in this life, you won't get reborn. So while I suggest to students to set aside the cycle of rebirth when they're first getting started, there does become a time like this where it's wise to introduce you to the cycle of rebirth and help you to start getting familiar with it. Because in order to make your way to enlightenment, this is something that you're going to need to be aware of and something that you're going to need to know. And as you've heard me share before in all of our classes and many of our classes, that none of the teachings of the Buddha are based in belief, including the cycle of rebirth and the 5 realms of existence, which you're going to be introduced to today. It's always about learning, reflecting to independently verify and practicing. So there's ways to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. You may not have the wisdom of exactly how to do that right now, but over time you can accumulate more and more wisdom to be able to learn how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. if you think about what you're thinking right now in terms of you only maybe have one life, and that's what some people think, that's actually a belief. There's no evidence whatsoever that you only have one life. The only reason why people tend to believe this is because they've been taught this in different places, or they can't remember their past lives. But some of the reasons why the Buddha taught the cycle of rebirth is, first of all, because it's the truth. It's actually true. This is what's happening. And remember, he's teaching you the way the world is. He's not explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And it's important to understand the way the world is related to the cycle of rebirth, because as you're removing the pollution out of your mind, you may get to a point where you do observe your past lives. And if you observe past lives and start having memories of your past lives, this could really shake you up if you didn't understand that this was actually normal. Because as you're removing this pollution out of your mind, you're more and more likely to be able to observe past lives. And if you say had some memories of being murdered and there was this horrible murder in your past life, and you know that didn't happen in this life because you're still alive, then this could really shake you up. Or maybe you're having some other memories from past lives. Maybe you're having memories of being sexually abused or some other type of traumatic situation. And this could really shake you up if you're having those vivid memories now, but you know it hasn't happened in this particular life. So this is one of the reasons why the Buddha taught this, is that you understand it's normal, so that when you start eradicating the pollution of the mind, if you start noticing residual memories from your past lives, you can train your mind to let that go and realize it's in the past. You may also start to experience communication with beings from other realms. There's 5 realms of existence. There's hell, animal, afflicted spirits, which some people refer to as ghosts. There's the human realm, and there's the heavenly realm. In each one of these realms, there's different qualities of these existences, and I'm going to explain it to you today. And you may end up experiencing communication from these beings, because as you start lifting out the pollution, the beings of hell, afflicted spirits, and heavenly realm, which are formless realms, they don't have physical form, they can actually start communicating with you, and you can start hearing these voices. And if you thought that these voices were not, if you didn't realize that this was the cycle of rebirth and beings in other realms, you could potentially think you're going crazy and maybe you're experiencing schizophrenia or something like this. But instead, this is just like if you're sitting at a table at a restaurant and 2 or 3 tables over, somebody is talking as a human being and you hear it, you've learned how to block that out and just focus on your conversation. And this is the same thing you can do with these formless beings. But oftentimes, because people don't see these beings, their mind can be shaken up by this. So you might actually experience communication from these beings. Or another thing that can happen is you might actually see these beings. Even though they're formless, some people can actually see hell beings, afflicted spirits, and heavenly beings. So these are all possibilities as your mind is awakening. Sometimes people think of these realms as being really far away in some distant place, like the hell realm being deep down in the core of the earth, or the heavenly realm far up in the sky somewhere. But this is actually untrue. All of these beings are in the same time and space as us, that right here, there's a human being sitting in this chair. And if I got up and left, there could be an insect or an animal that comes and sits in this chair. Just like that can occur with a human and an animal, these other beings are in the same time and space as us. And that's why some people can see them, some people can hear them and communicate with them. And then also you might observe past lives through residual memories. So today is an introduction for you to be able to help you understand that this is completely normal. And that if you start experiencing these things, while you may need to reach out for guidance and help to understand it further, you can understand that it's completely normal and it won't shake you up. What I'm going to be focusing on today, in addition to helping you understand the 5 realms, is helping you to understand how many of us in the human realm have evolved out of animal existences into the human realm. And this will help you to understand your journey to enlightenment, because what you're doing on this path is you're becoming a better and better human being. Oftentimes in the unenlightened state, people think that human beings are animals because the mind functions very much like an animal, because it's been conditioned by many animal existences. And many of us being reborn out of the animal realm into the human realm, we can experience certain habits and certain instincts and certain traits that are very similar to what an animal experiences. But this path to enlightenment is to become a better and better human being through shedding those animalistic instincts. So the more that you can understand what these animalistic instincts are and how we are now in the human realm and you can let that go, you can actually improve your progress to enlightenment. Because there's going to be certain things that we talk about today and that we've already talked about. That when the human mind gets angry, for example, it's almost like growling and roaring at another human being. Like when you get angry, maybe you become bitter and harsh and hostile towards people, trying to fear them into doing things your way. This is an animalistic instinct. And this is something that the animals do, and human beings in the unenlightened state do this as well. But you can shed that because you're in the human state now, and you can evolve and become a better and better human being through cultivating the mind and cultivating wisdom. So as we go in today's class, as always, you're welcome to ask any and all questions. You can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. I'm going to start with sharing with you some of the problems that one experiences in the unenlightened human state and helping you to be able to see a bit of this connection to the animal realm. But then we're going to talk about this in much more detail as we get going in today's class. If you are in the classes or you've studied the material that I've shared around the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires, we've talked about craving, anger, and ignorance, or some people refer to it as greed, hatred, and delusion. This is a high-level description of the problems that the Buddha discovered in the mind. The most detailed description is the 10 fetters. That's what you're learning, and that's what you're purifying the mind of, is eliminating and eradicating those 10 fetters. But those bubble up to this level of detail of craving, anger, and ignorance. And just a little bit of a summary, what craving is the longing, the yearning, the chasing after the objects of your affection, wanting things to be a certain way. The mind is craving permanence. The mind thinks the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So the mind longs and yearns and chases. It's almost like the mind is pulling towards this thing. It's like an unquenchable thirst. And the mind forms its inner feelings based on this craving, desire, attachment, this longing and yearning. Where if the mind gets what it wants, it gets these pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets oftentimes angered or frustrated or agitated or annoyed or any of these other painful feelings that can arise. And when these painful feelings are arising in the mind, like anger, the unenlightened mind falsely attributes those painful feelings to something external. You might think that your mom or dad are making you angry, or your brothers and sisters are frustrating you, or your boss is annoying you, or your coworkers, or your life partner, your children. But what's really causing these discontent feelings to arise is the craving, desire, attachments. The mind is craving for things to be a certain way permanently. And when the mind gets what it wants, the objects of its affection, it gets happy and excited. But when it doesn't get what it wants, it gets those painful feelings. And because you live in an impermanent world, you can't permanently get what you want. So you're going to be constantly experiencing this impermanence. And when the mind's not getting what it wants and that anger is starting to arise, this is where you can become unskillful through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. You might have pushed people away or pushed a situation away, thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But you can see that that didn't solve the problem, because when you push those people or that situation out of your life, you still get angry, you still get bitter, you still get hostile about something else. It's just a matter of time. Or you might have been unskillful with your intentions or your speech or your actions. This is like the animal growling and roaring. You might have been bitter and harsh and hostile towards people in your intentions, speech, and actions. Or the third thing you might have done is you might have put your expectations on people and tried to control them and get them to do things your way. And this is all coming from the mind's ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, the lack of wisdom or the misunderstanding. The mind in the unenlightened state firmly believes that other people are causing you to be angry and frustrated and agitated and all these other feelings that you experience. You can look back at any part of your life and see that your mind was actually causing these feelings itself all along. Even if you were in arguments, adamantly trying to convince people that they were making you angry and they had to stop doing what they were doing, or else you were going to continue to get angry, it was actually your own mind's cravings, the desires, the attachments. And then that anger arose, you became unskillful, and this is all coming from the lack of wisdom or the unknowing of true reality. And as long as that's in the mind, then the craving and anger will continue to exist. So while we call it craving, anger, and ignorance, It's actually because of this unknowing of true reality, or this ignorance or misunderstanding or misperceptions, that the mind's craving and anger continues to exist. So these same poisons or unwholesome roots, not only are they in the human mind, but they're in animals' minds as well. Every single being that is in the cycle of rebirth, they're experiencing some form of these three poisons. And now with these poisons in the mind, you can't live harmoniously with all beings, and you will struggle and have difficulties in the world, constantly having problem after problem after problem, not only with your own emotions, but with people in the world as well. You'll have enemies, and you'll be looking for ways of self-protection and things like this, where you're maybe protecting your reputation or other things like this. So when you eradicate craving, anger, and ignorance, the mind is actually enlightened at that point. But in the animal realm and in the human realm, the beings lack wisdom to understand how to eradicate these. In the animal realm, you actually can't eradicate it. You're not able to develop your mind enough. But in the human realm, you can eradicate these when you cultivate the wisdom of how to do it. Another thing that's being experienced in the animal realm as well as the human realm is something we talked about with personal existence view. This is where the mind is having the problem where it's clinging to this body or this self-image, and it's clinging to the self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And this is why when you spill something on your clothing, that you might get embarrassed in front of other people, because the mind's clinging to this self-image, wanting to be perceived in the world a certain way. Or you might be clinging to a certain self-identity, like I am German, or I am Lithuanian, or I am Russian, or I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am Brazilian. Any of this I am around your culture, ethnicity, your sexual orientation, your nationality, your job or occupation, and a whole host of other things, your mind can be clinging to this as your self-identity. And now you struggle and have difficulties when you hear agreeable or disagreeable things related to this. The mind can become angry or frustrated because it's clinging to the self-image of the body or the mind, wanting this to be permanent and thinking that this is who you are. Well, in the animal realm, those beings actually need personal existence view. If you're a deer out in the field and you're munching on some grass and a predator comes along, you need to know, oh my goodness, I need to protect this body and I need to go. I need to get out of here, right? The deer needs to have a certain amount of personal existence view, realizing that it's a prey animal and I need to get out of here. Well, in the human realm, we don't need this personal existence view. We can make wise decisions about ensuring that we don't do things that would cause harm to others, so therefore harm won't come to us. But in the animal realm, they need this personal existence view. And the same thing with conceit, that in the animal realm, they have this conceit, but we don't need it in the human realm. What conceit is where you're putting yourself above people or below people. And when you're putting yourself above people, you might be talking down to people arrogantly with boastfulness and pride. But then when you're putting yourself below people, your mind might be shaken up. Like maybe you have a boss that you put yourself below this person, and now you think you're less of a person, and now you're shaken up and uncalm around this person. This is because of the mind's conceit, that the mind is measuring and comparing other people and thinking of yourself as either being superior or inferior to other beings. Well, in the animal realm, we needed conceit. We had to have this in order to survive. When we were a pack of wolves, we needed to know who's the alpha male and alpha female, because they're the ones who are going to teach us how to hunt and how to survive. So this pecking order was very important in the animal realm. We needed to know who's the matriarch of our elephant herd, because if we didn't know who the matriarch was, we wouldn't be able to survive. She's showing us where is the food, where is the watering holes, where are the migration paths as the seasons change. We need to migrate in certain ways. And if we didn't know who the matriarch of our herd was and who was above us, then we wouldn't have survived. So this conceit in the animal realm is required, an important part of survival. But we retain this conditioning of not only craving, anger, and ignorance, but of the personal existence view and conceit as we move into this current life. So in this current life, we have this conditioning of the mind, and it's coming from our previous lives, that we've had countless existences in all these different realms that I'm going to teach you about, mainly the animal realm. And now coming into this human realm, we retain that conditioning. And now in the human realm, these things stand in the way of us having harmonious relationships with many people in the world. So we need to purge this conditioning. We need to purify the mind and get to this unconditioned mind where the mind's completely purified. And that's what the enlightened mind is. So this cycle of rebirth is helping you to understand this continuous rebirth over and over and over, where there's these continuous difficulties, where one is experiencing sickness, aging, and death over and over and over and over and over again. The mind is craving for permanent health, but yet it experiences sickness. And now the mind is discontent because it's craving this permanent health, but you can't experience permanent health because this human body is impermanent. One might be experiencing a craving for permanent youthfulness. And now as you age, you might be feeling discontent about that. Or you might be craving permanent life. And now as you're nearing death, you might be struggling with that. Or if you see the people around you struggling with sickness, aging, and death, like your parents, maybe they're sick or aging or dying, and you might find that because of your craving and your attachment, holding on and wanting them to be permanent, that you struggle during these periods of time. So while we look at the positive things of life, and an enlightened being surely looks at all the positive things, there's a certain amount of grief and misery and despair in coming back into this world over and over and over again. Getting to enlightenment, the mind is uplifted and bright and joyful, and you can enjoy life with ease. There's no more struggles and difficulties. But in the unenlightened state and in that animal realm, life can be very difficult and very problematic at different times. So these problems that the Buddha describes, not just these, but others, are hindering one from being able to experience the peace and the joy and getting to this enlightened mind and escaping out of this continuous cycle of rebirth. So there is an escape for you, and that's called the Eightfold Path. And that's why I taught that at the very beginning of this group learning program, because that's the core central teaching that you need to understand. And what the Buddha is teaching you through all these foundational teachings is to eradicate the pollutions of the mind, the 10 individual fetters that we talked about way back at the beginning of the program in chapter 3. But we're going to be revisiting those coming up here in a few weeks. But today, what we're going to be doing is looking at how being born so many times in the animal realm and now coming into the human realm, one continues to struggle. But let me introduce you to the 5 realms of existence and help you understand what's happening in these 5 realms. And then I'm going to pause for questions and see what you guys have questions about before we take this a bit deeper, so you can see this connection a bit more between animal existences and the human realm, so that you can learn how to shed these animalistic instincts. I'm going to explain to you the heavenly realm, the human realm, afflicted spirits, the animal realm, and the hell realm. So first, starting out with the heavenly realm, these beings are experiencing exclusively pleasant feelings. They don't experience painful feelings nor feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. And they can cultivate their mind to attain enlightenment. They have that ability, but they oftentimes lack motivation and they become complacent. Because they don't experience the painful feelings and the neither painful nor pleasant, they oftentimes don't take the effort to actually train their mind and get to enlightenment. But they have that ability to do that. The heavenly realm is not a permanent existence. You can see the evidence of this all throughout the world, that nothing around you is permanent. Everything in the world is impermanent. And you learn that through the universal truth of impermanence. So you can understand that the heavenly realm is impermanent. It's not a permanent existence. And the teachings of the Buddha aren't about believing a bunch of things and hoping that you can end up in this heavenly realm permanently, because that's actually not even possible. The beings in the heavenly realm aren't permanent. So if you've been taught that, you're going to need to be able to see the truth that this heavenly realm isn't actually permanent. And while beings can get to enlightenment there, and some beings do, they oftentimes are complacent and lack motivation, and they're reborn down into the other realms. They can be reborn into the human realm, they can be reborn into the afflicted spirits or animal, or even the hell realm, or they can be reborn back into the heavenly realm as well. So it's not an ideal existence to be in the heavenly realm. That's not what one should aspire for. Then there's the human realm, which is what you're probably most familiar with because you're experiencing that existence now. In the human realm, we experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. We experience all 3 conditioned feelings. We can cultivate our consciousness to attain enlightenment. We have that ability to develop wisdom and train our mind. And we tend to have more motivation than in the heavenly realm because we experience painful feelings and neither painful nor pleasant. And we don't like those in the human realm. We don't like the feeling of being sad and feeling guilty and shameful. We don't like stress and anxiety or resentfulness or shyness and these other discontent feelings. We don't like that displeasure. So we tend to have more motivation to be able to get to enlightenment. And we have the ability to get to enlightenment. So this is essentially the ideal existence in the human realm because we can make our way to enlightenment and we tend to have built-in motivation. And same thing like the heavenly realm, we can actually be reborn into any of these other realms. We can come back into the human realm, we can be reborn into the heavenly realm, or we can go down into afflicted spirits, animal realm, or hell realm. We can move in and out of these realms at any given time based on certain existences in the condition of our mind at the time of death. Then there's the afflicted spirit realm. Some people might refer to this as ghost, where an individual is experiencing a formless existence. And in this formless existence, an individual is experiencing the painful feelings, and they're experiencing the neither painful nor pleasant experiences, those feelings that we talk about in the conditioned feelings. They experience these particular feelings. They don't experience any pleasant feelings. They can't cultivate their consciousness enough in order to attain enlightenment. And they have extensive amounts of craving, desire, attachment to people, places, and possessions. This is where somebody might tell you that their house is haunted. And this is typically because a human being lived there in the past. They were clinging and craving on keeping close to this particular house, for example, or the people or possessions that are in that house, and they just can't let go. And now they've been reborn into this afflicted spirit realm or this ghost realm, and now they can't let go. And now someone might say their house is haunted, when in reality, all it is that there's an afflicted spirit that's hanging out at this house because it's attached to this particular house. Then there's the animal realm, which you're probably pretty familiar with. These beings experience pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. They cannot cultivate their consciousness enough to attain enlightenment from that existence. And they have no motivation to actually do so because they're operating on basic survival instincts. Essentially, what an animal does is it will typically kill, it will fight, it will play, it will sleep, it will have sex, and it will sit around and basically sleep and do nothing. These are kind of like the 6 things that an animal does. And because of this, it isn't able to get to enlightenment. Its mind isn't such that it can sit and listen to the Four Noble Truths and understand those and cultivate the Eightfold Path and all these other things that a human being can do. So an animal oftentimes is stuck in this existence for many countless existences before it eventually makes its way to an improved existence. That in the animal realm, say if you're a lion, for example, you're having to kill in order to survive. So you're constantly killing and killing and killing. And there's a certain amount of ill will there in the mind. And there's a certain amount of craving, as well as this ignorance or unknowing of true reality. And because of this, animals that tend to kill, they have a shorter lifespan than other animals. Animals like an elephant or a turtle or something like this that doesn't typically kill in order to survive, they have a much longer lifespan because they're being affected by these natural laws, whether they're aware of it or not. It doesn't matter whether you know the natural laws, they're affecting you whether you're aware of it or not. Just like the natural law of gravity, we're all affected by it, whether we're aware of it or not. So these natural laws are affecting animals as well. So an animal will bounce around into countless animal existences until it eventually finds itself in an existence like a rabbit or a turtle or an elephant or something like this, where it's not having to kill and be aggressive and hostile in order to survive. And now it has a better opportunity to get into the human realm. And that's not to say that a lion couldn't be reborn into the human realm. It's just less likely. So these animals being there, it's almost like a prison. And the Buddha describes it this way, as a prison, being in the animal realm and the hell realm, because there's constant, continuous, countless existences over and over and over and over and over and over and over again before you have an opportunity to get to the human realm. So you'd have to have really good, wholesome karma in order to be able to get into the human realm. And that's why it's unwise to allow this human existence to go to waste. Then there's the hell realm. This is the realm where they experience exclusively painful feelings, and they can't cultivate their consciousness enough to attain enlightenment. They have extensive amounts of craving, anger, and ignorance. They are stuck in this realm for a very long time frame until they can make their way to another realm. As I mentioned, the hell realm, afflicted spirits, and heavenly realm, these are formless realms. They don't have physical form. Where the animal realm and human realm, we have physical form. We are actually living beings. While these other beings are in existence, we don't consider them living beings because they don't have what's called the 5 aggregates. This is something you're going to learn if you move into the Pali Canon English study group. You'll learn about the 5 aggregates, where this is what determines a living being. And animals and humans are living beings. They can actually be killed and they can be harmed physically. But a hell being, an afflicted spirit, and a heavenly being, these are formless beings, so we don't consider them living beings, but they are in existence. So what I'm going to do is pause here and see what questions you guys have about any of these realms and how any of this works based on this introduction that I've provided. Remember, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. I see that Steve has a question here in Zoom. He says, "Teacher, if nothing is permanent, how can the end of the cycle of rebirth be permanent? Is nirvana the only thing that is permanent?" So what I usually say is that nothing in the world is permanent, meaning like material possessions or objects. There's something called conditioned objects that are impermanent. They arise, they change, and they fade away. But then there's also something called unconditioned objects. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. Enlightenment is that. It's an unconditioned object, that the mind is now unconditioned. There's no conditions that are producing enlightenment. So therefore, it's a permanent mental state. Where your happiness in the unenlightened state, for example, it's based on some condition. So it arises, changes, and fades away. But the happiness and the joy in the enlightened mental state, it's not based on any condition. So that's why it doesn't arise, it doesn't change, and it doesn't fade away. So enlightenment, the mind is unconditioned. It's completely pure. There's no condition that's creating the enlightened mind, so therefore it's permanent. And as well as the natural laws of existence. The natural laws themselves, they are permanent because they're unconditioned. They don't arise, they don't change, and they don't fade away. And this is the reason why what the Buddha taught 2,500 years ago is just as applicable today as it was back then, because he's describing the natural laws. Now, the books and people's memories, those are impermanent and those have been changing. And this is why people haven't understood what the Buddha taught. But when you get in touch with what the Buddha originally taught, describing these natural laws, you can see for yourself that his teachings are timeless and that they apply today just as they did back then, because these natural laws are permanent. So the cycle of rebirth is impermanent. Being in the cycle of rebirth is impermanent because it's based on conditions. That if there's craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind, you will be in the cycle of rebirth. But when you purify the mind and eradicate that, the mind is now unconditioned, and now you're outside of the cycle of rebirth, and you will no longer experience rebirth in the cycle of rebirth because there's no conditions that are causing you to be reborn. You've purified the mind, and there can't be another existence because there's no condition that's going to lead to that. Okay, it looks like Steve is just saying thank you for the refresher. I know we've covered that before, no worries. It looks like Vaneet has a question. Hi, sir. Does after enlightenment nirvana is rebirth possible? You won't be reborn in the cycle of rebirth. Once an individual experiences enlightenment, there's no existence in the cycle of rebirth in any of these realms: hell, animal, afflicted spirit, human, or heavenly realm. Once an individual gets to enlightenment and dies, the Buddha doesn't describe what happens next. It's an undeclared teaching, that he doesn't teach what's actually next. He specifically refers to it as an undeclared teaching, that he doesn't teach what comes next. And I have my various reasons why I think this is the case, which if somebody's interested in that information, you feel free to ask the question, and I'll share with you what my thoughts are. If you read this entire book series, you're going to come across it where I do share with you why I think the Buddha didn't teach it. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is so peaceful and so joyful. If there's something next, okay, so be it. It's either as good as what you're experiencing now or better. But if there isn't anything next, okay, so be it. Your mind is so peaceful and so joyful that it doesn't matter. So oftentimes people think that once you get to enlightenment, that you don't exist at all. This isn't actually true. You don't exist in the cycle of rebirth, but the Buddha didn't declare whether you do exist or you don't exist. It's an undeclared teaching. So you need to get to the point where you don't have a craving, desire, attachment to know what's next or long and yearn for anything to be next. You need to get to the point where in the present moment, your mind is so peaceful and joyful with the present moment that you're not longing and yearning for what may or may not come next. Okay, so great questions there. Looks like Helena has a question as well. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. So it seems like there is a tendency to perpetuate the state of mind, which
Can you say that again?
being
You're kind of breaking up there, Helena.
is. So,
Yeah, you're breaking up quite a bit. Sorry about that.
die
Maybe
in a certain
maybe you can
location, geographic.
oh, maybe you can put maybe you can put your question in.
Okay, so maybe I just write in the chat.
Yeah, I think that's better. It's breaking up quite a bit. Okay.
Okay.
Hans is asking a question here. He says, bodhicitta, question mark, maybe the enlightened being decides to come back to help others. This is actually not anything that the Buddha taught. You might have been exposed to this in other places, but the Buddha never taught bodhicitta. You'll never see it anywhere in his teachings at all. And you'll never see that the Buddha taught that an enlightened being would come back into the world. It's impossible for an enlightened being to come back into the world, because what's an enlightened being has done is they've purified their mind of craving, anger, and ignorance. The cause or the fuel that causes rebirth is craving, desire, attachment, that longing and yearning. That's what's causing the discontentedness in the mind, but it's also what's causing rebirth. So once the craving, desire, attachments are purified from the mind, not only is the mind completely peaceful and joyful, but the mind no longer experiences the rebirth in the cycle of rebirth. So this is the unfortunate thing about people having not having access to the teachings of the Buddha or not taking the time to study them, is that you might have been taught this in other venues, Hans. And when you study the original words of the Buddha, you can see that he never taught what it is that you're asking about there. Okay, so now Vineet asks a question. He says, thank you, sir. Does rebirth happen after human death in physical form? What do Buddhists say about it? Could you please provide more information about it? So there's not immediate rebirth. Once an individual dies, there's not going to be immediate rebirth. There's a period of time in between existences where the consciousness is somewhere, but it's not in one of these existences. And this is what the Buddha teaches. He doesn't give a lot of information on this because it doesn't matter for your enlightenment. In order to purify your mind and get to enlightenment, those kinds of things don't actually matter. But I have seen a discourse where he talks about it briefly. So there is a period of time, and I've seen as short as 500 years between lives and as long as 2,000 years. And I imagine there could be shorter and there could also be longer, but it's not going to be immediate rebirth after death. Okay, here's Helena's question. If we tend to be reborn into the same culture, then it seems logical that humans would tend to be reborn in the human realm again. Is that true? Looks like there's a tendency to perpetuate a once attained state of mind. So this isn't actually true. A being tends to be reborn into the same region of the world that they were in previously in previous lives. Not always, but they tend to be reborn into the same region of the world. But that doesn't mean that they're in the same realm. So if you're in a human realm in Thailand and you die here, that doesn't mean you're going to be human and be reborn back into Thailand. You could be reborn as a snake in Myanmar, or a rat in Cambodia, or something like this, right? So, or you could be in the afflicted spirit or heavenly realm in one of these areas too. So you generally are in the same region of the world, but not always. Sometimes an individual is reborn in other regions of the world, even though they might have existed at one time in a particular region of the world. Okay, I'm going to check Facebook and YouTube. So I see a question here in YouTube. How do the three formless realms eventually get to the human realm and a chance to be enlightened? The same way as all other beings, it's the cycle of rebirth, that these natural laws are affecting you, whether you're aware of it or not. So in these three lower realms, as they're moving around from existence to existence, they can get to better and better existences. For example, take like I don't know what they call it, a pack or a herd or a group or a troop of monkeys. I think it's a troop of monkeys. There's going to be some monkeys that are more angry and hostile and bitter and vindictive, but then there's going to be other monkeys that are more compassionate and more loving and more kind. And as we move through these different animal existences, our mind can be improved as we go through these different existences. So as an animal moves from existence to existence, say they become a rabbit or a squirrel or an elephant, they tend to have more improved states of mind in those existences. So now the natural laws affecting these beings, they now are going to be reborn into improved existences as they go forward. So these natural laws are affecting all of us. Some of these animals nowadays are being trained by human beings. And because we're being trained by human beings, or animals are being trained by human beings, we're seeing an explosion of the human realm. We've seen this shrinking of the animal realm, and we're seeing this expansion of the human realm, which is exactly what we would expect to see if the cycle of rebirth is true. Because what scientists tell us is that out of all the animals that once existed in the world, there's only 1% that are in existence today. 99% of all animals that once existed are now extinct, and this is what scientists are telling us. So there's been this shrinking of the animal realm. Now there's countless animals still in the animal realm, and that's only 1% of what existed. So those beings in the animal realm, as it's been shrinking, we know that they can't get to enlightenment. So they need to be reborn somewhere. They're either going into hell, afflicted spirit, human realm, or the heavenly realm. So we would think that as the animal realm is shrinking, we would see an expansion of these other realms. And that's exactly what we see. The human realm is gradually expanding. And then also with domestication of animals and animals living right alongside of human beings, and in some cases we're even training them to do certain work, they're becoming more domesticated, not through their own devices, but through human beings' involvement and intervention. We're training animals to be more friendly and more loving and more kind. And because of this, it's still their choices. But because of this evolution of their consciousness, they're able to be reborn into improved existences, potentially into a human existence. So for example, there is a story here in Cambodia, which is right next to Thailand, that they've trained a rat, or they had trained a rat, to sniff out landmines from the war. During the Vietnam War, there was a lot of landmines around, and they've been affecting people where they're stepping on these landmines and people are being killed. And what they did is this small rat that is very light, they trained it to sniff out these landmines because it's very light and it could walk around and it could let the humans know where the landmines are, and then they could actually get rid of these landmines. And this rat lived for 6 years, and it was credited with having found over 100 landmines during its life. I suspect that this rat is now been reborn into the human realm, or it's going to be reborn into the heavenly realm because of its work to cultivate its mind. Because even though the humans intervened and helped it, it actually made the choices itself, that there's some amount of free will that an animal has, that it has free will. It chose to learn what it needed to learn from the human beings to be able to now be reborn into a better existence, because in its animal existence, it was cultivating its mind. Now, it didn't know that that's what it was doing and that's what it would lead to, but that is what it's going to lead to because of the improvement to the condition of the consciousness. It's going to experience an improved rebirth. So these natural laws are affecting us whether we're aware of them or not. Okay, let me see if we have any questions coming in on Facebook. Okay, I don't see any questions there. So I'm going to keep going in our class, making sure. Oh, okay, we have a question here from others. Just one second. We have some questions here in Zoom. Looks like Helena is asking, and what's the reason for the tendency for rebirth in the same location where the being died? Because there tends to be craving and clinging, the mind's holding on to that particular area. So now the individual is coming back into that existence because their mind is clinging and holding on to the world. And now they have more of an opportunity to extinguish that craving and clinging, because one of the ways to extinguish a craving is to fulfill it. So if somebody's holding on to a particular region of the world, continuing to experience that, they'll eventually get to the point where they've experienced it enough and their mind can let it go. And then, okay, so Hans is saying Cambodia. Yes, Cambodia. All right, Joe has a question here. So as we destroy each other, the animal realm grows again, the pendulum swings. So if we do get to the point where more and more beings are having craving, anger, and ignorance, and they're not learning and practicing, and they're not developing their mind and getting to enlightenment, then yeah, beings are going to be reborn down into the lower realms of hell, animal, and afflicted spirits. You could potentially see that. But as beings learn these teachings, they cultivate their mind, they can see that they're getting closer and closer to enlightenment because the condition of the mind is improving. This is the very unique thing about the teachings of the Buddha, where a lot of teachings are believe, 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 and then hope something good happens when you die. You can learn these teachings through examination and investigation, reflect on them to independently verify them and practice them. And as you're training your mind and transforming the mind, you can see that the condition of the mind is gradually improving because it's becoming more peaceful and more joyful in this existence. And that's how you know you're becoming a better and better human being, because now you're able to relate to other human beings in a more loving and kind and compassionate and friendly and respectful manner. So we can see that our mind is evolving in this human state. And ultimately, when you get to enlightenment, you're going to know that too, because it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. There's no anger, there's no sadness, there's no frustration or agitation, and you will know that the mind's improving. And as I mentioned, just moving on here, as I mentioned, that as you're training your mind and you're getting rid of this pollution and it is becoming more and more peaceful and more joyful, there's less and less pollution in the mind. This is where you might actually observe past lives. This is a thing that is somewhat normal for an individual who's on the path to enlightenment. It doesn't happen for everybody, but it does happen for some people. The way that you can think about this is if you went out on your house and you went out on the street, you can basically see that street that you're on. You can look left and you can look right and you can see the street that you're on. But if you went to a higher vantage point, like on top of a mountain, you can look down over the mountain and you can see how all these streets interconnect, how one town connects to another, and so forth and so on. Well, it's the same thing that when your mind is eradicating pollution through training your mind on the path to enlightenment, you're moving to a higher consciousness. And as you move to this higher consciousness, you can see more of your existing life. You can look back on your life and say, oh my goodness, I was causing my anger all those times. I had no idea that that's what was happening. Or, oh my goodness, I pushed that person aside. I broke that relationship when I didn't have to, right? You start seeing more of your existing life about the unwise decisions that you were making that leads to unwholesome results, and the wise decisions that are leading to wholesome results. So not only can you see more of your existing life as you're moving to this higher consciousness, but there's the potential to be able to see your past lives as too. I don't suggest that you try to induce this, because this can give you kind of false confidence because you tried to induce it. But as you're training your mind with the Eightfold Path and you're eliminating more and more of the pollution, those 10 fetters, it's not uncommon for an individual to observe past lives. Again, it's not going to happen for everybody, but it does happen for some individuals. And if you experience this, this will be the surefire way that you'll know the cycle of rebirth is 100% true, because you'll be able to observe these past lives and have those residual memories. But there's other ways as well. If you're interested in independently confirming the cycle of rebirth, I suggest that you download volume 11 and you look in chapter 105. This is where you're going to be able to see the detailed list of the ways that I suggest to you to be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. I've given you 17 individual things that you can independently verify that it exists. I'll just share a couple of them with you right now. If you've ever experienced deja vu, where you're doing something right now and it feels utterly familiar to you, and you know that you didn't do this in this life, this is your residual memory surfacing and reminding you of things that you've done in the past. Now, typically, we kind of push that aside. We discount it. We just kind of almost think about it as it's not there. But this is residual memories coming to your surface of your mind. If you've ever heard or if you've ever been around an individual who's like 4 years old or 6 years old or 8 years old, and they've never actually seen a piano one day in their life, and they walk over to a piano and they lay their hands on the keys and they can play masterful piano, we call this person a genius. But really what it is they're having residual memories from their past life. They did this in their past life, and now, having never seen a piano, they can actually play masterful piano. And you can even see this, some people with languages. There can be like an 8-year-old child who was maybe born in Italy and only speaks Italian, but they can speak Chinese, fluently from the age of 8, and they've never even studied the Chinese language ever before. So you can see these kinds of things happening in the world, and this is evidence. If you're connecting the dots, you can see this evidence of the cycle of rebirth. It's all around you, but you just might not have been connecting the dots. So volume 11, chapter 105, you can see there where I put in the descriptions that I'm sharing to help you understand the cycle of rebirth and how to independently verify it. Again, I don't suggest somebody does that right from the beginning of their practice, because there are certain things you need to learn in order to be able to get to that point, and that's why it's in volume 11. But if you're planning to go forward and learning through the other books and other programs that I share, you'll eventually get to that point where you'll be able to investigate that. But if somebody has that burning desire to look at it now, it's right there for you. You would just need to download it or get that book from Amazon or something like that, and you'll be able to see it there. So you're moving to this higher consciousness where you potentially are able to see your past lives. This is very normal. And if you experience that, you don't need to be shaken up by it, or you don't need to be worried about it. It's a normal thing. Now, sometimes students do reach out to me and let me know that they're experiencing this and they have some questions about it. And yes, I can help you with that. But ultimately, seeing your past lives, the things that it does for you is, one, it confirms the cycle of rebirth 100% true. You'll know it without any certainty or without any doubt whatsoever. You'll have 100% certainty that the cycle of rebirth exists. Then the other thing it does is there's certain cravings in your mind right now that are coming from previous lives. And you can see that. If you see those existences and you know the cravings you've had in those lives, you can see that those cravings are in this life too. But other than that, it really doesn't help you on the path to enlightenment to see your past lives. It does help you to understand the cycle of rebirth. It kind of provides a bit of motivation on this journey and helps you to understand some of the other things that you might experience. But don't feel like if you've never experienced the observation of your past lives that there's something wrong or that you can't get to enlightenment, because you surely can. There's people that get to enlightenment without having ever seen their past lives. Okay, so this is moving to this higher consciousness. Well, now I'll share with you about the evolution of our consciousness from the animal realm to the human realm, because many of us that are in the human realm have been reborn out of the animal realm. And there's evidence of this all around you. The unenlightened mind functions very much like an animal. And this is why oftentimes people refer to human beings as animals. Well, I can assure you that we're not animals. We are human beings, but the unenlightened mind functions very much like an animal. We tend to have a lack of memory in the unenlightened state. Because of the pollution of the mind tends to be muddled and lacking concentration and lacking memory. You'll see that human beings function on a praise and reward system, just like animals. If an animal has a certain behavior that it does, and you would like to see them continue to do that behavior, you will tend to reward them with food or maybe a nice rub on the head, and this will incentivize them to do that same behavior again. And human beings function the same way too. If we get a certificate from a university or our parents praise us or reward us about something, we will tend to continue to do things that way because our behavior is incentivized by praise and reward. Also, animals will tend to learn from the pack of species that they have, just like human beings. We will tend to learn from other human beings. That when we come into the world, if we're in a family that's loving and kind and warm and gentle, we will tend to conform to that. Or if we're in a family that's bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive, we will tend to conform to that because we look at that as our example of how we should be as a human being. So if you're around people that are bitter, harsh, and hostile, your mind will tend to function that way. But if you're around more people that are loving and kind and warm and gentle, you'll tend to adopt that kind of way of being. This is instinctive behaviors versus learned behaviors. So just like an animal, a human being has certain instinctive behaviors and we have certain learned behaviors. This is what an animal is experiencing. In the human realm, we even have phrases that we say, like when somebody's being bitter and harsh and hostile, we might say, you're acting like an animal, right? Because we're referring to this human being who is in the human realm, whose mind is untrained. We're saying, hey, you're acting like an animal, right? Or we might say, you're fighting like cats and dogs, right? This is referring to a human being like an animal. We have many sayings like this in the human realm. Humans are fascinated with animals. We're so fascinated with them that we put them in zoos and we go and study them. As we're growing up with children, we have stuffed animals all around typically. We watch cartoons that have animals on them. We watch shows that have animals. We even sometimes have animals living side by side with us, sleeping in the same bed with us. We might even wear animal prints or fabrics that appear to be like an animal. We're so fascinated with the animal realm because we were there for so many existences that even though we're in this human state, we tend to be fascinated with this animal realm. Our mind is drawn to it because of our animal existences and having been there so many times. So the animal consciousness is preoccupied with craving, anger, and ignorance, with ego, that arrogance, that pride, that wanting to see the pecking order, and this protection of a self. And so is the unenlightened human consciousness. The unenlightened mind functions very much like an animal until we actually train it. When we train it, we can shed these animalistic instincts and we can become a better and better human. We'll still be fascinated with animals. They're pretty interesting, but we can realize that that's in the past. We're no longer an animal. We can become a better and better human being. So it actually helps you to be able to see it this way, because you can see that what you're doing on the path to enlightenment is that you're evolving and becoming a better and better human being. You're evolving out of this animal consciousness to a human consciousness, to this better existence where you can eliminate all the difficulties and struggles. But you can't do that as long as you hold on to these animalistic instincts. So when you see that your mind is growling and roaring at people, identify that as animalistic instincts. That's an animal behavior. And you need to realize that you need to shed that. When you see your mind measuring and comparing people and judging people and looking for a pecking order, acknowledge that as an animalistic behavior. And that now that you're in the human realm, you don't need that conceit. You don't need a pecking order. You can just see yourself as equal as all beings. You don't need to become bitter and harsh and hostile towards people. You can be loving and kind and warm and gentle. And that's what you would like to train your mind to do more and more. As you get to enlightenment, this completely ends the cycle of rebirth through a human learning and becoming more and more human, stepping into this better existence and being able to peacefully coexist with all beings. The condition of the planet that we see and all the things that we see going on in the planet, whether it's wars, whether it's pollution, whether it's constant fighting and bickering in our political environments, whether it's fighting or anything like this, this is the mind's craving, anger, and ignorance, the ego, the protection of the self, the mind being polluted. So as we look around the planet and we see what's going on in the planet, this is all due to humans' minds making decisions through craving, anger, and ignorance. But we can purify that. We can eliminate that. Essentially, what a human being is doing on the path to enlightenment is walking towards the light and getting out of this darkness, walking towards a better and better human existence. So if each human walks towards the light, the world will become a more peaceful and loving society. So we're either walking towards the darkness or we're walking towards the light. Which direction we walk is completely our choice. And if we hold on to these animalistic instincts, we'll stay in the darkness and we'll continue to walk towards the darkness. And there's the potential for us to be reborn into the lower realms. But if we make steps walking forward to cultivate our consciousness and gain wisdom and purifying our mind, we're now walking towards the light. We're walking towards wholesomeness. We're walking towards wisdom and improving our existence here in the human realm. In which direction we walk, it's completely our choice. So the more that we can see these animalistic instincts and this conditioning of the mind as being animalistic, we can see that we would like to become better and better beings, cultivating our consciousness and becoming a better and better human being. So this is everything that I have to share with you guys today. Unless you guys have questions, you guys can go deeper into this if you have any questions that you'd like to ask. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any and all questions that you like. So let me know if you guys have any questions on this. All right, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So this is something that you might decide to read in the book. Remember, this is chapter 20, and you can download this book for free. You can take it and go print it. You can order printed versions on Amazon, or you can get it here at the temple by just reimbursing us for the printing cost here at the temple in Chiang Mai, because there's more details that I describe in the book that are going to help you to better understand this. And you can always ask me questions, whether it's in class, in our Facebook group, you can post there, you can send me private messages, or you can schedule personal guidance if you like. I'm always pleased to help you and answer any and all questions that you have. Next week in our class, we're going to be in chapter 21, which is titled, What is the Future of Our Planet? This is where we're going to talk about climate change and how this is affecting us based on our own decisions. We'll actually have a discussion around this rather than me teaching anything, because you can read the book about what I teach there. I will teach you a few things next week, but it's going to be more of an open discussion where all of us can discuss together. So if you guys are in YouTube or Facebook, you're more than welcome to come into Zoom where you can have a discussion with us. So that's coming up next Sunday. And then tomorrow, I'm going to be starting a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course, which I teach every month, the very first week of the month. And then I teach on Wednesday in the group learning program. There's going to be meditation where you can come either Wednesday morning Thai time or Wednesday evening, and I'll be doing a guided meditation with you and then opening up to any and all questions that you'd like to ask. And you can see all of this on our website through our calendar by going to buddhadailywisdom.com. You'll see all the classes, courses, and retreats that we have. Because also in next month, or actually this month now, since it's September, I'm going to be in Mexico where I'm going to be teaching 2 courses there. So anybody who's in that area, if you'd like to sign up, there's still space that you're more than welcome to sign up for the courses in Mexico. And that's all available to you at no cost as well. You can make your way to Mexico, and then you can come to the courses there if you like. And then in March, I'm going to be in California as well. So you guys are always welcome to come here to Thailand or come to Mexico or California or anywhere else that I might be studying around the world. It's always going to be available to you at no cost. So thank you all for your questions. Thank you for your dedication and your diligence to learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha. As you would like help, feel free to reach out, because I'm here to support you along your journey to enlightenment. Thank you so much, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee krap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.